coming together. Is your undoing.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Film Seizure at the Movies. I'm Geoff Arbuckle. This week and for this final Film Seizure at the Movies for 2019, I got a pretty big one. I would say that almost any time that there is a Star Wars movie made or released, it is usually set to be what most people would probably consider to be one of the biggest movies of the year. Certainly one of the biggest talked about movies. And we'll get to that here in just a moment. But before I get into my thoughts on Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, do a little bit of housekeeping. New episodes of Film Seizure with myself and Jason Oliver every Wednesday. Just go to filmseizure.com. You'll find it there. Also, you can pick up our episodes on places like Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcast, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. That's where our stuffs are. Also, we upload stuff to YouTube if that's how you like to listen to stuff. Anyway, additionally, on Mondays, I do Monster Mondays. That is just past the 50th episode. And every Monday at those same places, just go to filmseizure.com. You'll find me talking about a monster movie. And also, one of the things I don't think I ever point out enough on those episodes, Monster Mondays is meant to be a positive show. I always, even if it's a really, really bad movie, and sometimes I've watched some really, really bad movies on there, I still find three things that I like about it, and that's what I primarily focus on. It's fun. Monster movies are fun. They're meant to be fun. And that's what I want to celebrate there. Couple of things of note in the near future. On January 1st, 2020, episode number 100 will be released. And that's a very exciting time for us here at Film Seizure. 100 episodes seemed almost unlikely to have been reached, but here we are. Shortly after that, we are going to have a little bit of a retrospective special with myself, Jason Oliver, Chuck Moore. Just kind of talking a little bit about the show. Just a little bit of self-congratulatory stuff. Also, the very first Saturday in January, which I believe is the 4th, that will be the start of 00 Saturdays. Every Saturday in the year of 2020, I am going to write a review on a Bond film. The odd number weeks from week 1 through week 49 of 2020 will be reviews of the movies. The even numbers between weeks number 2 and number 50 will be talking about the music, and particularly the theme songs and the opening title sequences will be covered in those. And then for the last 2 weeks of 2020, I will do a updated favorite list, and it's just my opinion. It's not meant to be a final word on anything Bond. I know I like some movies that other Bond people don't, and vice versa. But that's something to look forward to. It should be at least fun because the 25th Bond movie does come out in April. I love that series and want to talk about it. All right, I've kind of held off for too long here. It's time to talk about Star Wars, another series that I do like. And it's one of those things where it's like, how much can you really complain about Star Wars? You basically know that beyond the first 6 films, you're going to get what you're going to get. And for people of a certain age, they don't really look beyond the original 3 movies, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. It's kind of interesting because Star Wars kind of feels like a thing that we will have forever, and maybe not always in a good way. It seems like almost every year or every couple of years or so we have to ramp up for another Star Wars movie. And it is getting a little tired. And I don't want to go into too much of the negativity side of stuff, because Lord knows this is going out into the internet where you're going to find plenty of negativity about Star Wars, particularly about the last movie. And I'm going to assume somewhat of this movie too. But I like the series. I've told friends recently that in my opinion, Star Wars films have kind of progressed beyond trying to rank them, trying to figure out where the greatness is in these movies. Basically, the Star Wars movies are on a pass-fail kind of scale for me. With that said, they all pass. I mean, this one included. Some of them pass with more flying colors than others. Some of them have things in them that I don't particularly care for, that could maybe sour a lot of the experience of a particular trilogy or a particular movie or whatever. But generally speaking, when I go to see a Star Wars movie, I know they will never be among the top three, which are the three original films. The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite. Star Wars is my second favorite. Return of the Jedi is a close third. That's all there is to it. All of the other films, none of them will ever breach the greatness of those original films. And I also understand for some people, of a certain age, I know a couple of people who are a little bit younger who adore the prequels. They're not really for me. They still pass. They're still fine. They're still, they're still likable. I still get some entertainment out of them, even though there are some parts that I really think are really not very good. But that's the way it is, and I wanted to bring up the fact that I was doing the 00 Saturdays next year because James Bond is kind of in the same boat, right? Like there are 24, soon to be 25 Bond films that I dearly love. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are truly great. Some of them are actually pretty bad. If they weren't part of the series, I probably wouldn't like them. So with that, there is a little bit of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Pedigree. There's a little bit of pedigree that can be found there. And that is kind of what we're dealing with here with Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Let me talk first about what I really liked about this movie. For one, the third act by far and away is a really fun third act. There's some really nice moments there. There are good things that you see with the action scenes, with Rey having her final confrontation in the movie, or in the trilogy, I guess. With the space battle, there's a really, really nice use of the Star Wars theme at a particularly important part in the third act. It almost feels like, the third act is where the movie writing began and they worked backwards from it. Which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but it is definitely the most well thought out piece of this movie. I'll also say that I'm glad to see some of the characters actually have some things to do. One of the biggest complaints about the first two movies was that you never really got a sense for who Poe Dameron was, the Oscar Isaac character. You really finally get a little bit of emotion where it's really, really needed. And it's not I will say that there is some forced emotion in certain parts of The Last Jedi that, it was, take it or leave it. But in this, there's some nice earned moments. There's some moments I didn't really count on, and was mostly pleasantly surprised. So generally speaking, I would say that the third act is very good. I do very much like the use of some of the characters. And I think that if you are generally a Star Wars fan and you generally liked the movies that Disney has made over the last 4 or 5 years, then you'll probably like this too. I don't see any reason why you won't really like it. It may not be your favorite movie, but I think you'll generally appreciate the movie. Now, some of the negatives that I have, again, the movie is not particularly great at telling us why we should care about some of the new characters that are created for this. The first 2 movies of this trilogy had a real problem with a Captain Phasma being a really cool looking stormtrooper in a silver outfit. They're very highly she was very highly promoted as a character because she looked really cool, but she didn't really have anything to do, and you didn't really get any sense of why she was supposed to be so cool. That's generally an issue in those movies, and it's kind of an issue here. There's some new characters that come along that you're not exactly sure. There feels like there's more history there than they're giving us. And if we're having to go outside of the movies to find out why Poe and this other character have a relationship, or what this person is that you kind of meet more than halfway through the movie, an important part, and there's certainly things you can do with stuff like that, but it feels like we were meant to think of them as being something more than they really turned out to be. And that's been a problem with this movie. It's kind of a problem in any long-standing series that have a built-in audience. I could argue that there are some issues with that in the Star Trek franchise too, where it's like, oh, this is supposed to mean something, but if you don't know everything that exists about Star Trek, whether it's novels or movies or all the TV shows, you may not understand what the importance of that is, and you might look at it and it's like, why do we stop dead in our tracks to introduce this character? What's that supposed to mean? Who's that supposed to be? So there's a little bit of issue there. Probably my biggest complaint about this movie is that this movie has to do so much in the first 2/3 of this movie to get to the final act, to the final battle. The heart and soul of the whole galaxy is, it comes down to the final act of this movie. 9 movies lead to the final act of this movie, and we're not really well set up for it. It's kind of unfortunate, because there are a lot of possibilities. There are very likable actors in these roles, but you never really felt like that. You never really got to see them for who they were like you did the original characters. And even in the prequels, you get an idea of who somebody is. You get an idea of the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan in the prequels. Even if you didn't like those movies, you understand what their relationship is. You understand what the end goal is. The original trilogy, of course, had the benefit of it building its own road to defeating the Empire. In this, while I don't truly dislike The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, neither one of those movies really equipped us with understanding what should come next for this movie. So that jam packs the front half of this movie so much that it's dizzying at times. It didn't feel like I was watching a narrative. It felt like I was watching a video game, and that's going to lose some people. It's going to be great for kids, but there are going to be a lot of adults scratching their head during this. Like, wait, what? Why? Where are we? What's going on? And that's just, I mean, again, it sounds like I'm coming down hard on this movie. I'm not really, but you're at one planet, then you're at another planet, and then you're suddenly over here halfway across the galaxy, or you're outside the galaxy now. And it's just, it's hard to kind of catch your breath and to it needed to slow down a little bit. And I'm not talking about slowing down by making the movie longer or cutting out scenes, but it needed a moment to where you can get a full understanding of who this new character is, what he or she is after, what they're wanting, how they're being affected by the stuff going on. And you got that. Take, for example, Empire Strikes Back. You get an understanding of what was going on with Lando Calrissian when you meet him. You meet him late in the movie, but the movie late in the movie meaning almost halfway through the movie. But the movie does slow down for you to get an understanding of what he's doing, who he is, and what his relationship to Han Solo is. You get the opportunity in Return of the Jedi to understand the threat of Jabba the Hutt. And in this movie, you're meeting people, you're getting these new characters that are, filling roles, basically. Filling the role of mostly getting our heroes, creating a blockage for our heroes, or creating a situation where our heroes now have to go and do a thing. And it's dizzying, and it's a little off-putting, and it's probably my largest complaint in this movie is that the first two acts are just, it has to set itself up, and the previous movies should have done that a little bit better. At the very least, The Last Jedi should have done that a little bit better. It almost feels like this movie has to start over again. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is The Last Jedi. The internet pretty much either unequivocally loves that movie or absolutely, with all of its disdain and guts, hate the movie. I like the movie fine. Were there problems with it? Yes. The biggest problem, though, is that the backlash, I think, affected this movie. Originally, this was supposed to be made by a different director. When The Last Jedi came out and the backlash came, they had to go and get J.J. Abrams again, because he set the new trilogy on the right path, and now he was going to come back and finish it. The problem is that he has to hear what the fans said, and it did probably disrupt the natural flow of this trilogy. And I can tell you right now, if you didn't like The Force Awakens, or you didn't like The Last Jedi, or you're one of those people who really don't like these characters, this movie is not going to be a movie you're going to like. Now, my suspicion is you'll probably go and see it just so that you can hate on it. But this movie is not going to win you over if you didn't like the last two movies. If you don't like any of the Disney Star Wars stuff, this movie is not going to win you over. It doesn't quite have enough to, I think, re-engage anybody who may be lost. And look, if you're one of those people who are just didn't like the Star Wars movies that have come out recently, that's okay. You can move on. The Star Wars stuff that you do like is still forever going to be there. And I know a lot of people complain that, a lot of things were excised from canon. When Disney took over, it threw out all of the, what they now call legends, all the novels, the comic books, all that. Who cares? If that's something you want to believe in, if that's something that your vision of Star Wars is, keep it. You can absolutely keep it. I choose to think of certain things from Star Trek that is not really part of canon. I choose to believe that some of that stuff is true. It's fine. This movie, you're not going to go see this movie and be won over. If you're on the fence about going because you really didn't like the last one, it's okay to stay home. In fact, maybe you should, because the God's honest truth is the only way that new Star Wars stuff is going to be put in safe hands, or at least hands that will have a clear-cut future vision for what a trilogy will be or what a series would be, then this movie may have to kind of fail a little bit, and you're going to maybe have to take this one You may have to take this. You may have to take one to the face on this one. But that's, again, I don't want to give any spoilers. I could talk a little bit more about things that would be very spoilery with this. But the simple truth is, did I like this movie? Yeah. Am I looking forward to seeing it again with some family in a couple of days? Yeah, absolutely. Maybe there's something in a second viewing where now that I kind of understand what the pacing of the movie is, maybe I'll like the movie a little bit more. But if not, that's fine. This is a okay end of a saga. It's of course, this is the third time we've said this is the end of the saga. We said that once in 1983, once again in 2005, and now we're saying it again in 2019. I can't wait until the next time we say that this is the finale of the Star Wars saga. Trust me, there will be another trilogy that will come along that will find its way into this mythos. In 15 years, they may bring Rey back as the head of the new Jedi Order or something like that. But if they don't, I'm fine with that. If they do, well, I don't have any power to stop them. But yeah, generally speaking, I like this movie. Generally speaking, I'm glad that the characters that, at the very least, people like Poe, where you saw a glint of something that could be cool and interesting, I got to see that in this movie. There were certain things that I was a little bit concerned with that they did do, but I was not necessarily unhappy with the way they did it. There is at least some sense of passion in this movie that's been missing since the original trilogy, really. So, there are some good things here. But if you're just not really that into Star Wars, or if you're just not into these last few, you're probably not going to like it. I'm not going to say don't bother going to see it, but if you want to stay home, that's okay too. If you're a Star Wars fan, if you like all of the movies, if you're like me, all the movies are on the pass-fail scale and they all pass, you're going to go see this movie and you'll probably say the same thing I did. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I liked it. It's not going to, it's not going to ruin your life. It's not going to ruin your childhood. It's not going to, it's just a movie. You'll probably like it if you like the movies that have come out recently. And if you didn't, you're not going to, and that's okay. How do I feel with this compared to the other movies? I don't know. I have to live with it for a little while. I'd probably say, again, it's not going to hit anywhere near the original trilogy, because those are what I grew up with. Those are part of my very soul, if you will. Of the Disney movies, which is the only way to really compare this movie to, I don't know. It's somewhere in the middle, I guess. There are five Disney movies. I'd probably say it is probably third or fourth best. I don't know. I wish there was more that I could really say. I'm more than happy to discuss the spoilery type of stuff with people after they've seen it. I didn't really want to do a spoilery review on this because, that's a dick move, to give away spoilers on a movie that a lot of people are anticipating or whatever. But I will say that if this is the last Star Wars movie for a little while, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd rather see more of the stuff that's on Disney Plus, like The Mandalorian. I can say at least from an official film seizure standpoint, between myself, Jason Oliver, and Chuck Moore, we all like that show quite a bit. It has exactly the stuff that we've been missing from Star Wars, because we always have to tie things back to Skywalkers or to the Force or to the Jedi or whatever, and it's like this movie's kind of existing, or this TV show is kind of existing on its own. I would like to see more of that going forward, and less a show or a movie or a story that is dependent on the Jedi versus Sith and Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine and all that stuff. I don't need any of that stuff anymore. I think there's a whole galaxy of stories you can tell out there, and you don't need to be stuck in just one little corner of it. And that's what I would rather see going forward. I don't really want to get hyped for anything else Star Wars related for a while if I can get away with it. But anyway, generally pass. I feel pretty good saying that I did enjoy myself watching this movie. I had a good time. It was interesting sitting in an auditorium where the last few movies, when the lights went down and the Lucasfilm logo came up, there was loud applause. This time, dead silent. Dead silent until about 2/3 of the way through this movie, until people really kind of was into it. That should say something. There's a little bit of luster gone. It's the first time I've ever been in my adult life ever been to a Star Wars movie where there wasn't some sort of applause or some sort of excitement just from seeing the Lucasfilm logo or seeing the Star Wars logo with the big blare of the symphony from John Williams' score. It was weird. And that should really say something. If this is the end for a little while, I'm more than happy with that, and I'm sure a lot of other people would be too. All right, so if you like the movies, go see it. If you don't like this movie, it's fine. If you do, and if it turns out to be your favorite, that's fine too. I'm not going to argue anybody with how they approach this movie or how they feel about it. These movies hit people in different ways these days, and that's fine. So again, every Wednesday, filmseizure.com, listen to a new episode of Film Seizure. January the 1st, New Year's Day, Film Seizure number 100. Pretty excited for that. We got a studio full of a-holes for that one. Every Monday, go to filmseizure.com, listen to Monster Mondays, where I talk about a monster movie. And then, you can find us at various places. Beyond that, of course, you can go to Facebook. You can go to Twitter at Film Seizure, where you can go and follow us there. Just go to filmseizure.com. You'll see all of that stuff. You'll find out exactly where we have our podcast uploaded, where you can follow us on those sites as well, and also where you can follow us on the social media side of things. So, until 2020, where probably the next thing we will talk about will be looking back on a couple of things in 2019. Jason and I would like to we're definitely going to talk about what our favorite movies are, what the best of 2019 is. We'll definitely have an episode of that will be kind of a special Film Seizure at the Movies. We have discussed possibly talking about one other thing that probably won't get enough mention in our best of, but something that we can still talk about nonetheless in a separate episode of Film Seizure at the Movies. So I wouldn't really expect any new movies to be talked about on here until probably February or so. But until then, I am Geoff Arbuckle, and don't forget to save me the aisle seat.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.